What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'm doing a camera comparison that a lot of you have been waiting for. I have the OnePlus Nord, the iPhone SE2 or 2020, and I also have the Poco F2 Pro, and these are the best mid-range phones that are out right now. So what I want to do is I want to test the camera in every lighting condition and see which one has the best camera. So let me know what video looks better, let me know what audio sounds better, and then let's go ahead and see who is the king of the mid-range camera in 2020. Let's do this. Before we get started, let's talk about the testing process. All of these photos were taken in auto mode with auto HDR on to make things fair, but the OnePlus Nord and the Poco F2 Pro both have pro modes to manually change your settings for that perfect shot if you have the time to. The iPhone stock app does not have one built in, so you'll have to rely on third-party apps if you want this capability. All three of these phones are budget friendly, but just like you would expect, they take fantastic photos during the daytime, but for the most part, they are sharp, full of detail with great dynamic range and colors. But after looking at a ton of pictures side by side, here are some of the differences that I noticed. In a lot of shots, the three cameras look extremely similar, but the biggest variances are probably going to be in white balance and color rendition. They all go back and forth when it comes to white balance, so this will all be personal preference. To generalize, I would say that the Nord tends to process with more contrast, so if you like that, you will lean towards the OnePlus. Sky rendition is also different on all three. If I had to go with consistency with accurate representations of the sky, I would choose either the iPhone or the OnePlus, but then again, it just depends on what you like. In terms of dynamic range, I'm really impressed with the OnePlus Nord keeping up with Smart HDR on the iPhone, doing a nice job of balancing the scene, minimizing clipping on the clouds. This is where sometimes the Poco fell behind. You can see the clipping here and on a few other pictures, and a lot of the times the Nord creates the brightest whites without compromising highlight blowout, so that was nice to see. I did notice on the Poco F2 Pro that the HDR is more aggressive, boosting up shadow detail, so in some shots the HDR is overdone like here in the trees, but some people actually might like this. If you're thinking about the iPhone SE, just remember that there's only one camera, and while the other two have multiple cameras, the big thing for me is the ultra wide angle camera. This is the camera for me that I can't live without. There are just some scenes that you can't capture if you don't have this, so I hope the next SE includes the ultra wide angle. Also, the iPhone doesn't have a telephoto or zoom lens, so you'll have to rely on digital zoom versus the 2x zoom on the other two cameras. Here are the max digital zooms, and the Poco here has the most detail and looks the sharpest. The iPhone SE has a 12 megapixel camera and captures a lot of detail, but the OnePlus Nord has the same 48 megapixel camera from the OnePlus 8, and the Poco F2 Pro has a 50 megapixel sensor, so they both offer high resolution modes. There is a slight change in processing with the OnePlus, so you do sacrifice some dynamic range, so more than likely you should stick with the 12 megapixel mode. But when you crop in heavily, you can see how much sharper the other two are in comparison to the iPhone. The Poco F2 Pro is really impressive here, it's the sharpest and has less noise than the OnePlus Nord. The next difference is the depth of field. The OnePlus and Poco have bigger sensors, so you'll notice more natural background separation without using portrait mode. It's not a giant difference up close, but it is noticeable. You can tell here on these bricks, so if you like that more artistic look with more natural bokeh, the Poco might be the way to go. When it comes to portrait mode, all three phones have it, but the annoying part is that the iPhone can only do this with human subjects, so when it doesn't detect a face, you'll get this error message, which is frustrating. I hope they add this in a software update in the future because it's more than capable. They all have nice edge detection, but the Poco seems to struggle with HDR under this mode, but I'm sure that this can be fixed in a future software update. Let's talk front-facing camera. I'm super happy that the Nord has two cameras, one regular and also a ultra wide angle. This is something that I want on all smartphones. It does look like I have monkey arms here, but you get what I mean. For groups, it'll be awesome. Under super harsh lighting, they all don't do well. HDR is kind of a mess on all of them, but the iPhone does put a lot of contrast on the skin, making me look too orange. But if you do a little editing in post, I think the iPhone has a much more balanced shot here, so recovery will be much easier. When it comes to video, the Poco F2 Pro surprisingly can shoot 8K video, which is amazing, while the other two cap out at 4K 60 frames per second. Bright and cool video on the Nord, while the iPhone is warmer and more accurate to the scene. The Poco does record HDR video, so it looks super crazy saturated until you convert it, then it looks really good. Let me know which one you think has the best looking video. When walking, all of them do a great job with stabilization since they all have optical image stabilization. I think most smartphones today do a good job at this, but if you shoot a lot of action, remember that the OnePlus and Poco both have super stabilization modes, which make a big deal when running or moving around. You do take a resolution hit to 1080p, but sometimes it's worth it. So let's get into the low light performance, which is the big deal for most people, and this one's a little tougher since it's a mixed bag. Let me explain why. When it comes to moderate low light, the three look pretty similar. Of course, the same thing applies here. You'll get some white balance differences and some shots will be more saturated than others. It all comes down to personal preference, but the difference in technicality is an interesting one because the iPhone has the smallest sensor and it does show more noise in the shot and you can clearly see it when you punch in, but it does a lot of times have better dynamic range with Smart HDR. Look at the building up top here. And it retains more detail in a lot of the shots, which really surprised me. So when looking and comparing the straight up auto modes, I was actually blown away that this was happening. I expected this to be a complete blowout, but this is where the other features really make a difference. The iPhone SE does not have a built-in night mode, and I wish it did because then it would be more compelling. The changes most of the time are drastic, more light is captured and creates a much brighter scene. I do wish there was more consistency with the night mode because most of the time the two pictures are completely different with complete changes in white balance, but it's amazing to see what night mode can do. It gives the shot the sharpness it needs and adds extra dynamic range. I would say out of the OnePlus and Poco, the OnePlus has better processing at night most of the time. The balance is better with harsher lighting. Take a look at this sign. The Poco F2 Pro needs improvement in night mode. A lot of the shots I was getting this purple hue and the noise reduction can be too aggressive. But it does go back and forth. I think the Poco's night mode here captured it best. Nice nighttime sky rendition with sharp details. There is another way to capture at night with the high resolution mode. It keeps the night look, but when you punch in, the detail is awesome. The Nord really did a great job here with overall balance with the lighting and detail. Here is another example of a high resolution capture. Crop in heavily and you can see the amount of detail. This is what I was talking about with the noise reduction on the Poco F2 Pro. This isn't that bad here at all, but you can see that it softens the image where the OnePlus lets a little more noise happen, but the details are better preserved. Usually I would pick an immediate winner, but this one's a little tougher to call. I guess it depends on what's more important to you. Take a look at this shot for example. Even when cropped in, they all have noise, but the iPhone HDR is really flexing here. But the caveat is the image is softer than the other two for sure, and in a lot of these scenarios it was much closer than I anticipated, but the iPhone does have the most noise, so be aware of that. The nighttime video pretty much shows the same thing. They are all not the greatest with low light video. The Poco is the sharpest looking at them side by side, but if you look closely, you can see the autofocus hunting pretty bad at night. I didn't see this during the day. You can see the iPhone preserving that detail on the ball while the other two clip it, so you can see my dilemma here. The Poco and OnePlus are close, but if I had to pick a winner out of the three, I would slightly lean towards the Nord for low light, but it could go either way. I don't think there's enough of a drastic difference. Sometimes it does crush the shadows and is too contrasty, but the nightscape makes up for it. And if you're extremely still, by the way, if you move, it can cause some super blurry photos, so be aware of that when you're using this camera. Let me know what you think after seeing these images, who you think won in low light. Oh, and I can't forget nighttime selfies. You guys would kill me if I didn't include these. Once again, love the ultra wide angle on the Nord. Portrait mode is all good indoors with ambient lighting, but when we start turning the lights down, you can see that the iPhone again is going oversaturated on the skin, while the other two miss the accuracy as well, but the Nord I would say is the closest, but the Poco and OnePlus are notably sharper. Going outside, this is when you notice that the SE is falling apart, the image is noisy, and the skin color again is missed on all three, but the Nord again here with the better outcome. Going drastic with one lamp far away, they all struggle, but the Nord is trying to reduce that noise. You gotta love my baby skin tone, it's super smooth. The Poco is in the middle, which I think has the best outcome, but the SE, wow, it is noise city, so the front facing camera is not great on the SE. So there you have it. I think during the day you're going to get great results regardless, but you do need to think about flexibility. If you don't care and want to keep it simple with one camera and just want consistent results, then go with the iPhone SE. But if you want that extra flexibility, then go with the Nord or Poco. The Poco is a powerful phone all around as well with flagship internals, so you need to consider that as well, and it also has 8K video. The OnePlus Nord is the return of the budget OnePlus, and overall I think most people will be happy with this for the price. I think it performs well and you don't sacrifice much at all for the price point. So the Nord camera is legit, and while it's far from perfect, I'm sure it'll get better with updates. So I think it's worth buying. Thank you for watching. Let me know which camera won in your opinion in the comments below. Subscribe for more videos like this. Hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one.